All righty. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We will get started here momentarily. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We will get started momentarily. We are just letting everybody load into the Zoom app, and then we will start here in about 30 seconds. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for Small Business Boot Camp. I'm Robert Theobald, your host, and I'm the Small Business Ombudsman and Vice President of Small Business Services here at the Arizona Commerce Authority. So to start out, we like everybody to place in the chat where you are tuning in from. We like to see where throughout the state and sometimes other states where our participants are from. So you can place in the chat where you are tuning in from. All right, Mesa, Glendale. We're here in Phoenix. Where else? We got a few others on. We got Uptown Phoenix. All right. Thank you, Jessica. Tempe, Gilbert. All righty. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate that. So we're glad to have you with us today. One of the first things we like to do on the boot camp is thank all of our community partners. This is just a sample of some of our community partners. We could not do these webinars without them, their time and their expertise. They're the ones that make the boot camp great and make the presentations happen. For those that are new, the Small Business Boot Camp is designed to help small businesses prepare, plan, and grow their businesses. And we do that through a number of different ways that we call part of the boot camp. And that's first with our Tuesday morning webinars that you're all on today with us. Again, we do these every Tuesday morning. And then we also do additional workshops, lunch and learns, in-person workshops, virtual workshops. And so those are also part of the program to help bring education to small business owners. One of the great things about doing virtual webinars and workshops is we get to record those and include the information in our content library. And in our content library, we have well over 300 recorded webinars and presentations, along with slide decks where there are slide decks to help bring this content to you to access at any time. You can, again, access the recordings and the slide decks. There's no cost to participate in this either. It's a great resource. You'll also see on your screen there, you can sort by 7 different categories to help narrow down the content, because with 300 webinars, sometimes it can be difficult to find the one you're looking for. But if you have any questions, you can also email me and I will guide you to whatever session might work best for what your needs are. The ACA also has a number of other programs to help support small businesses. This is just a sample of some of them. You can find all of our programs at azcommerce.com/programs. There's these plus many more. one of the programs we like to talk about is our small business checklist. This is a great interactive online tool that helps small businesses that are starting their business and small businesses that are expanding their businesses to new areas to identify the commonly requested licensing, registration, and compliance requirements at the local, state, and federal levels. You can also find a lot of other information to help you as you start and grow your business on the checklist. You can scan that QR code and it'll take you to it. One of the great things we have on there now is a virtual assistant to help out. The actual checklist has a ton of information and has a lot of details in it. But if you're looking for a quicker answer, you can use our virtual assistant, Sally, and Sally can help you with some of those quicker answers. We also have a new generative AI part of Sally that if you click ask a question, it will pull a generative response from all of our information. And it's our simple foray into leveraging AI to help all the people in Arizona. So it's a great tool. So quick look at our upcoming sessions. We've got a number of great sessions, not just through the end of October, but through the end of the year. Here are the next three that you can access. And then some quick updates. We have a lunch and learn coming up on October 17th with the SBA. This is virtual, and we will be recording it. But the SBA has a new capital access credit line program. And so we're going to have the SBA actually on to talk about it and share the information. So feel free to join us for that. It'll be at 11 a.m. and go till about 12:30, 1 o'clock. And you can ask all the questions related to this program directly to the SBA who runs it. With that, we're going to jump into today's speaker. We have Don Alex, the district manager from Insperity. We're excited to have him with us. We appreciate it because Don jumped on at last minute. We had some snafus with our previous presenter, and we wanted to make sure we did touch on PEOs today as promised. And Don was able to step in and help us out. And so we're going to mix up this. We're not going to do slide presentation, but we're going to do a Q&A with Don and talk about PEOs and what they are and so forth. So Don, I'm going to let you go ahead and do a quick introduction. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see us. So go ahead and give a quick introduction of who you are.
Will do. Robert, good morning, and Faith, thank you for putting this together, and thank you for everybody jumping on this morning. My name is Don Alex. I'm the district manager with Insperity here in Scottsdale. I've been with the firm for about 12 years. Prior to that, I started and ran a mortgage company with my good buddy from college and ran that for about 13 years. Sold that in 2006. Did a little bit of private banking work in some of the large banks in town, and then started at the end of 2011 with Insperity, advising, guiding, and encouraging the sales team here, and then working with a lot of small businesses in the Valley.
Very good. Well, we're going to go ahead and jump in, and we want you to, all of our attendees, we want you to ask questions. So at the bottom of your screen, there's a button that says Q&A. Click on that, type your question in, and we'll get to those. We will have time to answer some of those questions you may have. So please post those in the Q&A. But to start out real quick, Don, what is a PEO and what does it stand for?
PEO stands for Professional Employer Organization. And the CEO of our company, who started the firm in 1986, worked through legislation and people in Washington to really establish the model. So if you think about it, small businesses, when they start, they apply for an EIN number, and then they're responsible for the taxes and the employees and everything that goes into running the business soundly. Under the PEO model, businesses are allowed to dovetail on our EIN number, therefore gaining access to big company benefits and the human resources advisory that we're able to provide for businesses so that they can run like a small boutique firm. But as far as competing for talent, they can also compete with some other bigger firms on some of the things that they need to offer to attract and retain the best people.
So how does a PEO work?
Um, will be exposed either through direct outreach or through some type of referral to a small business that is struggling with attracting and retaining people. We'll do a discovery call with them, get to know them first, right? Connect with them, find out if they have mission, vision, and value, what their exact value proposition is. And then usually pretty quickly in the beginning, get into their people strategy and how they view their people and what does it mean to have, for example, you have the polo in the community and it says ACA on it. What does it mean when people are in the community as an employee working for the Arizona Commerce Authority or any other business that they work with? And then we will do a little bit of an analysis on how they are managing their payroll burden or their fringe. And then we'll expose them to some ways that we might be able to help them.
Okay. So why do companies use PEOs?
I think most business owners get into business to deliver whatever that specific value proposition is. You had mentioned a little bit about, the auto business that you were in before, right? That's pretty straightforward. It could be medical, it could be widgets, it could be whatever it is. But a very, very big component of every business is the people strategy. And that is not necessarily a skill set that every business owner has getting into business. Regardless of what you're doing, there are 5 things that every business has to do. They have to create a customer, which is sales and marketing. They have to have some type of finance, managing money and risk. Their operations delivers on whatever the promise is. And then there's technology and human resources. So when we meet with businesses that are a good fit for us, Robert, many times they don't have a specific human resources strategy and they can't articulate what it means to be an employee of XYZ company. And done incorrectly, it can lead to bad things like high turnover or undeveloped employees. It could translate down into bad service for customers, poor culture within the company. So I think they turn to us for our human resource expertise and the aggregation of things like retirement services and healthcare benefits. And how do I pay my people, but stay out of non-compliance issues that could result in fines or lawsuits?
So it's kind of like in outsourcing your HR to another company, correct?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we try to encourage business to have someone that is the strategic head of their HR at their firm. And we act behind the scenes as kind of a toolbox for them. So if they can strategically deliver the mission, vision, value of the company and help employees on the employee life cycle from recruiting to retirement, as they get into things like building a solid foundation, which may start with, let's say, a job description or all the compliance issues or legalities that come up that are constantly changing. How do they know that they're kept up to speed on those type of things? A PEO can assist them in answering those questions and kind of put that structure from a human resources, base human resources in place for them so that they can run their business.
Okay, excellent. So what are some of the types of companies that use and benefit from PEOs?
Anybody that pays an employee, we have 2 different models. When we talk about PEO or the professional employer organization, I think most people think about the co-employment model or the model where I described using an EIN of a bigger company, of an Insperity or an ADP or a Paychex, to then be able to shift some of the risk of being an employer to a partner like us, and then also getting access to big company benefits and retirement plans where that company is the plan sponsor and it takes some of the liability off the business. But all those companies, including Insperity, also have what maybe is called a traditional or an ASO model, where that business is still using their EIN number, so they retain the responsibility from a legal standpoint for managing all of the risk in their business. And you could do something as simple as payroll and time and attendance. But I think a good advisor is going to come in and ask the right questions to a business owner to decide which path is best. And at Insperity, we've had customers that have gone from one to the other. So for example, Netflix started with us with 7 or 8 people. They left when they had 1,200 because we had put in place 8 or 9 full-time HR people, help them get that structure to where now they had enough size where they could, acquire those type of things on their own. Or we have companies that grow to a certain size, like a HelloFresh, to where they just do our traditional model, and we're just helping them with payroll because we've kind of put that, that structure in place for them. So really, it comes down to whatever company you're working with, having a good discovery call, finding out suitability, and them getting to know you, getting to know your story about how you started the business, how you envision it, and then quickly getting to what does it mean to be an employee of your company. What do you want your customers to know about you? What do you want your employees to do? Because we motivate them with a paycheck. They have a job description, which is the minimum they need to do to keep their job. But what you really want to do is develop a type of culture at your company that some of the best firms in the world have, like the In-N-Out Burgers or the Chick-fil-A's or any other company that we go into and we say, wow, there's a palpable difference in here, right? And that ultimately, Robert, that's culture.
Yeah. So, Don, as we were talking before we started the webinar, I had mentioned that I had worked with a company that used a PEO, and we had used a couple different PEOs in my time there. And one of the things that in my role with that organization is I realized we weren't leveraging all of the benefits that the PEO had. And so we started leveraging some of those. One of those was to help me write, basic employee manual, employee handbook, and other employee related programs or support documents to be a better employer. And so also, as we were talking, you had mentioned that size wise that PEOs often fall in that too big to be small or too small to be big range. Can you kind of dive deeper into that?
Yeah, I think, at 20 or 30 or 40 employees, you're competing for talent against, in some cases, very, very big companies. If you're a small medical practitioner, you're competing against the Banners and the Aetnas and the big medical outfits out there. If you're we talked a little bit about cybersecurity, right? If you have a boutique cybersecurity or computer services firm, you're competing against some very, very big companies. When it comes down to that portion of the interview that talks about benefits and retirement and things like that. But what you're touching base on is some of the infrastructure at the company that's very important to have to be able to develop and train your employees. And at that company size, it's all hands on deck. Many people are wearing multiple hats, and the HR function sometimes gets pushed to the side. So at 20 or 30 employees, you're going from a local player maybe to a regional player, and you need resources in companies like PEOs to help you with leadership development and maybe game planning going from regional to national. Sometimes it requires hiring people in different states, which can be very burdensome to a business owner, dealing with different state agencies and things like that, getting those tax ID numbers set up, and then operating under the rules and regulations of the different states. So we find across our entire enterprise, we have some very, very big clients, and we go down as small as 2 or 3 employees. But the average is about 20 to 30. It used to be a little bit smaller, but with the advent of the Affordable Care Act, which is maybe now 10 years ago, where benefits kind of came into play for a lot of employers, it pushed our average size client up a little bit. But I think really the key is we're looking for businesses that want to be an employer of choice. They have a getting better agenda, and they know that competing and keeping the best talented people is what's going to drive their business and keep them growing.
So I'm going to make an assumption here with our businesses that are online that they all want to be the best in their category. So with that in mind, at what level or numbers of employees should a small business start potentially looking at a PEO as an option?
Well, it's kind of hard to say because I've met people in their bathrobes in their house with an idea, and they're 1 or 2 people, and they've left when they had 200 or 300. I can think of a couple of government contractors. I can think of a couple of commercial contracting businesses in town here that the names of, that we literally met them in their house with an idea. But I think instead of a number, Robert, I might think more of symptoms of frustrations that you're having. Okay, I can't sleep well at night. I'm doing payroll mobily on my vacation, right? Or I have my spouse doing stuff with it and it's affecting my family life. I have a new employee starting and it's on the same day where I have a big bid that's due, or a kid is sick, or I have some other type of frustration. That can really negatively affect the first impression of an employee on a first day. Those are the type of things that will happen where as a business owner, you say, boy, maybe I need to get a little bit of help. And I think that's where companies like, and the value that the Arizona Commerce Authority comes in, because people like you and Faith, your members can reach out to you and say, I don't even know where to start, but here's how I'm feeling. I'm stressed out. I didn't handle an employee situation maybe as correctly as I should have. And with business owners, they're writing their name on the front of the check, not just the back. When they can't make payroll, they're writing a home equity line check, right? And they're making those things happen. They're going without a paycheck. And it can be very, very stressful. Now, there's a lot of reward at the end of the rainbow if you do it right, but there are a lot of pitfalls for business owners, and ultimately it comes down to them. So that's why we love working with groups like yours, because your membership sees value in reaching out to you and say, God, give me some direction and help, right? So I don't want to dodge the number. Like there's not an exact number, but I think it's more symptomatic of the frustrations that you're having as it relates to your people strategy and some of the risks and liabilities that you're responsible for as a business owner that are preventing you from growing and adding on more clients and helping more people with whatever you do.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. And what are some of with that, what are some of the a la carte, the PEO is a professional employment organization. You go for the full service PEO, there's a ton of stuff. But what are some of the a la carte services that most PEO organizations provide to small businesses?
I've seen two different routes out there with the different companies that are alternative for business owners. Some of them are very price sensitive. If you use just our payroll service, let's say, and time and attendance, and then everything else, like you said, is a la carte, right? If you have additional W-2s at the end of the year, that's another charge. If you want to use our 401k, that's another charge. If you need human resources, employee manuals and things like that, that's another charge. That's not negative, but I think that's very effective to people who are very cost sensitive. And we've all been there personally or professionally in our lives. So you know what I'm talking about there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why proper discovery and a really good discovery call to determine fit with whoever you're working with is important. Insperity is more all-inclusive with either their traditional model, to where it's a flat fee every month, regardless of how much you call us, how much work we do for you, how many times you run payroll, how many W-2s you have at the end of the year. But again, I think whoever you're working with, you really need to do a deep dive into what you're looking for, and then have the ability to morph or change into the different models as you're growing, because needs change and it can be up one way or the other. So it could be as simple as payroll and time and attendance for some folks, because they have someone like yourself who's got extensive HR experience, and they have a full-time person. But getting back to the 20 or 30 employee size, sometimes for a business that size, Robert, it's not cost effective to hire a $70,000 or $80,000 a year full-time HR person. It can be much more cost effective to outsource it and partner with someone until you get to that stage. Getting back to Netflix, by the time they got to 100, 120, then we had trained and put in place one full-time person, and we still assisted them. And then when they got to 500 and 600 people, they had a couple other folks, and then they kind of left the nest as we got them as far and as successful as they've become. So I think there's a lot of great firms out there. Business owners need to find out which one is the best fit for them. Some firms are very hands-off and very reactionary, and some are more proactive. And I think you need to do an honest assessment of your business and be honest with an advisor about your personality. And are you the type of person that when you're hitting the 6th floor and the elevator doesn't open, you keep railing on that button? You want to be with a very proactive company that picks up the phone and does those things. What I see in the service world today is everyone going to self-service and going to a kiosk and going to a fax or an email or a text for an answer. I don't know about you, but I don't want to know the code of the Vidalia onions at Bash's, right? But I've had to check myself out so many times. I feel like I should take my lunch break and maybe the break room there, because I feel like I'm an employee. But that's the way the world's going. But I think business owners, a lot of them want that hand-holding. They want someone to talk to. They want sometimes just to, during COVID, we had people calling our service center and our HR people just venting, just talking about emotional health and the stress that was on them, and keeping their remote employees engaged and those type of things. So, it can be everything from everything that a PEO does, and you'll never use it all. To your point, I think it was a great one. We'll get people, Robert, that will say, well, gosh, I don't want to pay for things I'm not using. Well, the question sometimes is, well, if you need it, it's there. It's that type of deal. I know a lot of people who are empty nesters and they live in a 5-bedroom house. So, the kids come for the holidays and they got a place to stay. So I think you really just need to do your homework, get with the right company, and find out who feels better for you and gives you the best advice, and then applies the right. I like diagnosis and then prescription. Otherwise, it's malpractice. So you got to do it in that order.
Excellent. Thank you. And to go with that, we're going to post in the chat links to 3 of the big PEO organizations: Insperity, ADP, and Paychex. There are also smaller local ones and that you can check out. But the links that we're going to post go to these organizations' web pages that talk about outsourcing HR and some of the other things that they do, things to think about. So they're good reads to get you introduced more into what the PEOs offer. But with that, we have a few questions we want to jump into from the audience. And again, if you have questions, post those in the Q&A. The first one goes back to something you mentioned early on with EINs. It says, how does sharing of the PEO EIN impact other procedures within a small business that does government contracting?
Great question. We have a lot of government contractors. We have 7 or 8 companies that are clients of ours down in Sierra Vista because of locality to Fort Huachuca and some of those things. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot. First of all, it doesn't negatively impact the business. The way the PEO is structured is we are the employer of record for all payroll and tax reasons, and it gives your employees access to the large company benefits, retirement plans, and things like that. It also doesn't mitigate some of the agreements in a GSA contract or government contractors when they're on base or security clearance or whatever else. They're still operating under the guise of all of those rules. So it doesn't affect them in any negative way. As a matter of fact, it's actually positive because we've had a lot of our government contractors write into some of their bids when they're bidding on work that they're with Insperity. And that gives a lot of these entities or contracting offers comfort because they know there are little nuances. I don't want to bore you with it, Robert, but whoever answered the question, asked the question will know this. There are certain things regarding benefits and people who are maybe on TRICARE for life because they're retired government, employees, that if they waive the benefits, that you have to document through DCAA reporting money in lieu of those benefits, and the reporting and the documentation that you need to provide to make sure you're in good standing and not out of compliance that could otherwise mess up some of your ability to bid on contract work in the future, we can assist with. So there's nothing negative, all positive. Also, maintaining your cost as it relates to your staff and your people is critical in government contracting because sometimes these contracts are fixed. So they need to know to the penny, what is my overhead or my payroll burden or fringe on my employees, and it helps them price their bids correctly. So government contractors is definitely someone that should look at PEOs.
Excellent. And then another question is, how are costs related to PEOs estimated for a business?
How are costs estimated? I think this is maybe a pricing question. What does it cost? So our traditional model can be between $20 a person and $40 a person. Obviously, the price goes down per person as you get larger, right? Mm-hmm. Our traditional model is $360 a month, all the way up to 7 people. And that's payroll, time and attendance, all the HR advisor, and everything else. On the PEO side, we do an analysis, and it depends on how much risk we're taking on and that company and how much healthcare they're going to utilize, and if they're going to utilize our 401k or what have you. And we're typically about 1% plus or minus of what they're spending right now. So a business owner right now that hires you, Robert, for 50 grand a year, it costs them 60, right? They have 8.5% of matching payroll taxes, FICA, food suited, everything else. They got 5% for your benefits. They have worker comp insurance, EPLI, life insurance, AD&D, human resources, all of those things, usually about 20%. The cost for Insperity, because we charge an admin fee and then we have offsets in some of these large benefits that we can offer, typically is the equivalent of hiring someone for $10 an hour. but it can't just be the cost. It has to be the way you're operating your business. Is it a good fit? I think the government contractor question was an excellent one. Are there any unintended consequences or barriers to using a PEO that would negatively impact my business? You have to look at all of those things, but typically it's within 1% of what businesses are paying right now.
Excellent. Yeah, and I know from my experience with PEOs, some charge a flat fee, some charge a percent of payroll.
Yes.
Some, when you get into benefits, one adds it up as apples, the other does it as oranges. So
Yes.
you have to dive deep in when you're comparing. If you're working, getting quotes from 2 or 3 different PEOs, you have to look real carefully to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. And
The tough
there's
thing, the tough thing, Robert, is you can't compare apples to apples because different companies acquire and partner with different healthcare companies, for example, differently. So it can be very frustrating. What Insperity does is we're a flat fee, and we show the per person per cost day for every single employee, every payroll run. So you can see a per diem on every single person. The percentage of payroll is common with some companies, and it actually is advantageous if you have a very low payroll. So maybe lower educated, higher turnover, a low payroll. But if you have a very high payroll and you're paying someone a big bonus, the percentage of payroll can get expensive. But I think the question you brought up, or the point, is a very good one. It's frustrating because there's not apples to apples, but you should be able to get into the details. And I always tell my clients at the end of the evaluation process, go and talk to some people that have used the different firms, find out what they like and they don't like, find out if it's a good fit. The companies that you mentioned are excellent, but some are better fits for certain companies than others. And that really is the challenge for business owners when they're doing it. I would absolutely, encourage them to take a look at a couple different ones and line them up. But the apples to apples comparison sometimes is a little bit difficult.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Well, those are all the questions I have, and we don't have any more from the audience unless you guys want to throw some more questions up in there for Don. But we are always okay to end these early if we need to. We don't need to stretch it on and drag it out. But we've got some great information from Don on PEOs and how they can apply to your business. We had another question pop up in there. What is the process to transition to a PEO? Great question, Jessica.
Yeah, we've had small companies that have transitioned within 4 or 5 days. It's bumpy and it's ugly, but those are the emergencies at the end of the year. Help me out, right? Hey, help! My speaker canceled. I needed an emergency. So that does happen. But typically, you should leave yourself 30 to 45 days, because what happens is, and I can speak only for Insperity, but I think other companies do the same thing. You will take a look at where you are in the year, your current payroll run. We'll see all the taxes that have been collected. We'll see who's met their minimums for state and federal taxes, Social Security taxes, and we'll do some test payroll runs. We'll make sure that everybody is on benefits, transfers over their deductible to make sure that's done. We'll go through. We have a management team that really handles that transfer, because here's the crux of that question. When a company is making a change, you really have to be focused on the impact of the employees. Change in general is scary for folks. We have to make sure that everything's perfect, because no one will give us grace for messing up payroll or benefits, right? That has to be perfect. And the HR people and payroll people I talk to, they rarely get a phone call on payday from someone who says, "Hey, Robert, thanks for nailing payroll again. It was perfect." But if you're off by a couple of bucks, you're going to get a phone call. So there's no grace in getting those things wrong. So you should take about 30 days to make sure that transition is good, a couple of test payrolls, and then we put together a narrative or an introduction where we roll it out to all the employees and saying, "Hey, at a time when a lot of companies are cutting back, XYZ is investing in you. And we're going to share with you all the new benefits that you get, discounts, how you can, all the things that the company's now investing in Insperity. We make it sound like it's expensive, because time and money wise, sometimes it is. But 30 to 45 days is really important. You can do it quickly, but planning a month in advance. You want to give the current people you're using, I think, just courtesy a 30-day notice anyhow, right? And make sure it's done that way. But we put a lot of time on the upfront into that management of the change, because you have to get it right on day one when you transition over.
Excellent. Thank you. So that looks like it. Again, we appreciate Don jumping in for us on last minute notice to help out. We appreciate the great answers and explanations about PEOs and the services that they provide. Again, we posted in the chat some links to Insperity, ADP, and Paychecks, and there are more. If you Google PEOs near me, you're going to get a number of sponsored ads and unsponsored ads and other stuff. But it's definitely something that, from my experience, I think a lot of small businesses can benefit from looking into it. Part of the boot camp is to bring you information to help you with all that other stuff you have to do in your business. And HR is one of those other things that you have to deal with. And so for many of you, the PEO might be the right option to help you focus more on what you do. I really like the government contracting piece because a lot of those government contracts, you're focused on very specific things, and having somebody that can consistently take care of the HR side of it can be very helpful. So, Don, thank you again, and we want to thank all of our attendees for being with us. We appreciate you and your time. Just a reminder, we will be back next Tuesday morning for another boot camp webinar. But until then, everybody have a great week, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
You too. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Yep.